I got a question for you. What do Justin Turner of the Dodgers face in a 3-ball, 1-strike count, people on a diet, and people dealing with major temptations in their lives, what do they all have in common? Yeah, a need for more self-control. Would that be fair to say? Self-control. Because the problem with self-control is we know the right thing to do. Rarely are you and I at a deficit for understanding what the right thing to do is, yeah? I mean, the only thing I want to fill you in, and it's just one of those things about church, and that is that donuts have calories. Donut holes do not, which is one of the real benefits. That's why we buy so many, just to let you know. Because knowing the right thing to do isn't the problem, right? It's not at all. It's doing the right thing, and then it's not doing the thing that continually has put you in the tank. And that takes a level of self-control. In fact, I'd say today, as we look at the subject of self-control, it may be the key to your spiritual growth and life, as it is to mine. Because Jesus saved us by grace through faith. That cross marks it beautifully. There's no question. You didn't do anything other than receive his gift that he accomplished with no help from us. Absolutely none. In fact, the book of Romans says, for while we were still sinners, we were still his enemies, he died for us. But on the other side of salvation, the other side of having been saved from the penalty of sin, is this thing called living your life, the rest of your days. And one of the things that punctuates that, and it was one of the issues that Peter wanted to make sure that his followers, those who came after him, because he saw it in other people and he saw it in himself, was the issue of self-control. It may be the bridge between you and I living a life that is okay, that is filled with constant struggle and backup. You ever done that? The 1 step forward, 3 steps back life? Yeah, me too. Self-control may very well be the piece that locks us back into the life we were looking for. And I want to talk about it today. Not only is it the next item on Peter's list in 2 Peter chapter 1 that we're looking at today, when we're talking about adding muscle to your faith, but like Tommy Lasorda really learned, and that is adding self-control is important if you want to stay in the game. Argue every call, go nuts, and you're on the sidelines. Have no self-control and your life will run amok. We know that from personal experience. We've watched it in the lives of others, right? We're really good students. The question is now, will self-control mark our lives in a powerful way? One of the things that Pastor Nathan said that I've learned from, and I learned from him, he's like 25 today, and it's so cool. That's right, Nathan. You're not getting away early here, bro. But one of the things Nathan says all the time, which I really love, he says, God loves you just the way you are. But he loves you so much, he didn't want to leave you there. He's got a better spot for you on the other side of faith, and that is that we're going to figure out, with his help and our participation, how to function as Jesus followers. Last week, we talked about how do you think like a Jesus follower. This week, we're going to talk about what it means to add self-control, to keep us in the game, because that's where we want to be. We want to finish this thing out well. And we're going to talk about that today. So pray with me here as we begin. Lord, today I thank you for my friends here. I see they're all here. They're all my friends. I mean, I think I know everybody here. How cool is that? What a lucky man to have so many wonderful friends. And Father, I thank you for just waking me up this week. That life is like a moment today thing. Don't look too far ahead. Let's live it well today. And may this issue of self-control grab a hold of us today, right here, right now. That we just don't let it skip off into the future. Maybe we'll look at it next week. No. You have a message for us today, and I want you to speak to us, I pray, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, the truth about self-control is, right off the bat, one thing you know is you're not born with it. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? I mean, you think, okay, you get it at salvation. No, any mother of a 2-year-old knows self-control doesn't come with the package. When you take that bundle of gorgeous little human joy flesh away from the delivery room, self-control is probably the farthest thing from your mind, because there is no control in that baby. It cries when it wants. It does whatever it wants. It does when it doesn't want to. It just does. Self-control is a learned behavior. It is not instinctive. Instinctively, we go crazy. Instinctively, we do whatever we want. Again, we've all been teenagers. And some of us even lived through the 60s and 70s. And some of us remember those times. And we know that we did things that were not in our best self-interest. What the heck is that? It's because you were not born with self-control. You got to get it somewhere. And today is all about where it comes from. Peter says this in the passage that we've been reading. He says, supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence. We talked about that idea, having the courage to do the right thing, to stand up for him. That needs to be added to faith. You're not born with that. You have to learn it. And to moral excellence, he said, add knowledge or discernment, right? So that you'll make the right choices. Because, again, we're not naturally discerning. We have to learn how to be discerning. And he says also, and to your knowledge, add that last little hyphenated word, self-control. He says you got to add it. You got to figure it out. It's got to be added to your experience, right? Again, you're not born with it. It doesn't come with the package. It isn't how things are put together. You've got to figure it out. And that's why you can be older. You can have experience even as a Jesus follower, and self-control can plague your life. And I hope that gives you some comfort as well as says, there's still some room that this self-control thing needs to have a hold on me and me on it. And I certainly want us to have that thought here today. Paul writes this to the church at Corinth. Listen to what he says. This is in the Message paraphrase. He says this. He says, I don't know about you. So he's obviously talking about himself. He says, but I'm running hard for the finish line. I'm running really hard. Even if you're short of breath, run hard. That's the idea here. I'm giving it everything I've got. He says, no sloppy living for me. Aren't those good words? He says, I'm staying alert and I'm in top condition. Why? He says, I'm not going to get caught napping. Telling everyone else about it. In other words, I'm not going to be telling everybody else how to live and then miss out myself. What he's saying is that self-control was the piece of life that he had learned. And here's a guy that was theologically trained like no one else. He was a fellow, heritage-wise, he came from a great line of Jewish people. His father and family taught him well. He was schooled at the best places, had the best experiences, became a Jesus follower finally. And he understood that there is a piece of life that you got to get a hold of. Otherwise, you and I will run in a deficit. We will let life affect us. We will let every appetite and attitude and thing that kind of comes at us will rock us unless we get a grip on this thing called self-control. And it's a big deal. He says another thing is, what is it? It's a very strong sign of spiritual maturity. No question along the line, people that are self-controlled have done something. Now, it's just not white-knuckling life. It's not just holding on with your fingertips for all you're worth. And we're going to find out in the next point here what it's about, what it really finds itself. But listen to these words, because this is how important Paul the Apostle understood it. In the list that he generated regarding what the fruit of the Spirit, or the result of you connecting with Jesus and starting to live an obedient life. In other words, you start moving towards him by believing what he says, and you begin to put his words into the shoe leather of your life. Listen to what he says. He says, but the Holy Spirit produces, in other words, the fruit of beginning to walk obediently with God is this kind of fruit in our lives. Here, you know the list. Love, top of the list. Joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness. And what's the last item? Self-control. There's no law against these things. In other words, you can't stop them. And neither can you start them if you're not willing to participate. And notice the last one. I don't think he meant self-control to be last capriciously. I think it's because it is the most difficult. It is the biggest challenge. Because when you begin to get a grip of what Jesus has done for you, you fall in love with him. And as you begin to obey him, you can see that love is the operating system of how we function as believers. We care for others more than we care for ourselves. If you're going to serve other people, you have to get to that point. If you're going to survive VBS, you've got to do that, right? Along the way. As cute as they are, they still say, can I have, I need, I want, where is my mom? But you love them over those experiences and others in your family. I mean, that's reality. Your husband, your wife. The husbands never whine. We don't. On the days that start with a Y sometimes, but other than that, I think we. But the issue of life is self-control that he understood as being a battle royal for followers. And he wanted to make sure that we understood that whole idea. So what does it mean? What does self-control mean? It means temperance. It's a word we don't use very much. Remember, there was the women's temperance movement, which was about banning alcohol, banning drinking. They didn't do well. That didn't last very long. Somehow there was some resistance. But the word temperance just means habitual moderation of appetites and passions. That's learning to turn the idea of saying no into a life habit. There's some things we just say no to, right? We've learned that you can't say yes to the wrong things and be okay. Big deal. And we want to say no to the wrong things. Extremely important. All the words of Jesus, if you say no to them, you know what? I mean, if you're not willing to follow, they don't do you a lot of good. What did James tell us? You want to be not only hearer, but a what? Doer. Yeah, so we get it. I mean, it's not that complicated, but it is, it's easy to understand, but it's hard to do, is it not? Because when those donuts are out there, you go, I never eat donuts, ... Except for a church. Right? So we give ourselves, we let ourselves off the hook, and that's the problem. But temperance says, I've habitually learned how to moderate my appetites and passions. Notice I said moderate. Hey, there's self-control means I do things in moderation. I just don't allow my life to become out of control. The word self-restraint is that I take charge of me, right? That's important. And of course, our favorite Andy Stanley series, The Issues of Guardrails, without a doubt, setting guardrails in your life. And it's such a great way to look at self-control because, again, you're not going to be so rigid that your life is, it's a square box. Nobody lives that way. I don't go to the beach because people wear bathing suits. Rumpf. Yeah. Sometimes I go to the beach. No, come on. We live in Southern California. You have a bathing suit, right? Do you wear it ever? Okay, right. Come on. But we've got to learn how to live with self-restraint. We've got to put guardrails on our lives. You remember, guardrails are those wonderful things on the road that not necessarily right at the edge of the cliff, but they're here so that if you hit them, there's still a margin of safety so you don't go over the cliff. So we learn to set guardrails on our lives. We learn to do things in moderation. It doesn't mean we're wimpy or middle of the road. It means we're smart. Because the worst thing you can do is be out of the game, right? The worst thing you can do is stop functioning. I was in the hospital this week, and the worst thing you can do is when they call that code blue thing. That'll grab your attention in a way that the best thing about being in the hospital. I was in the hospital for a day and a night. We were in this room. If you ever go to the hospital, there's a room. I didn't know. They put me in this room. They played soft music, and it was angels visited us every 3 hours. I thought, this may be heaven. It ain't bad. This is not bad. My wife's still here. I didn't want to mess her up. And it was kind of cute. She snuggled in next to me on the bed. And so I said, is this okay? Well, but we get busted for this? I felt like a teenager, But they came in and just patted us on the head and left us alone. It was really cool. We had a great, but I forgot what I was talking about. What was that? Help me out. What were we saying? Guardrails. Was that it? No, the guardrails were on the outside of the bed. That was the thing. We didn't fall out. That was the whole idea. Yes. What was that about? Remember, page 6 is where all the good stuff is. It's happening right here. I'll pick it up right from there. I forgot. So, see, I get a break this week, though. I get a break because I'm not quite all here in the right setting. But you really want to set limits on your life. Otherwise, you will definitely go over the cliff. You will go right past the guardrail. And you know what? We're out of the game. That's what I was talking about, being out of the game. Yeah. You want to do anything to stay in the game. That's our goal. So we're going to fight like heck to make sure that happens. And I think if you try to sum it up, self-control really is the mastery over all our evil desires and appetites. It's having a mastery of it rather than it mastering us. One of the great passages in 2 Peter chapter 2, he says, "For whatever overcomes a man or a woman, to that they are enslaved." In other words, you are, if things that overcome you, they overwhelm your life and you have no choice. And whatever freedom means you got a choice. We want to keep that open. We want to live for him. We don't want to be stuck on the wrong side of how we are to live. Paul writes this, he says, "For the grace of God has been revealed, bringing salvation to all people," the cross of Christ. "And we are instructed to turn from godless living." There's our mandate, "and sinful pleasures." So we have a responsibility as believers. It's on us. We should live in this world, in this evil world, if you will, with wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God. So therefore, we put guardrails up. We're smart. We're not going to be overwhelmed or caught unaware. That's the idea. So our warning to ourselves is, hey, look, I can't say, well, I didn't know. It just caught me by surprise. Yeah, I mean, that may be your first excuse, but if you use that as a continual one, you're in trouble. You're a train wreck, right? I mean, we can't live that way. We got to be smarter than that. We're not part of that deal. And the third thing here, I think, is really key. This is where we start getting on the solution side of this whole issue. And that is this: you and God both play a part in gaining self-control in your life. God will participate, but you got to do the work too. There's no way out of that. Look what he says here in Philippians 2. Paul writes this. Notice Paul writes most of everything. Peter slips in now and then, but Paul's the big gun in the New Testament. Here's what he says. He says, "For God is working in you, giving you the desire," very important, "and the power to do what pleases him." So positionally, on the inside, you've been saved. You're made righteous. On the outside, if you guys come to our Roman study, you hear all about this. Tonight, 5:30, George Dewar is teaching. You want to be here tonight. But we talk about this, and this idea of what happens on the outside is what we're talking about. On the inside, I've been made holy. You are ready for heaven. On the outside, you're a mess. On the outside, God is still working in your life and mine. And that's what he is speaking to here. He says, God is working in you, giving you the two things you need, desire and power. And the fact that you have a desire for self-control is a good thing, by the way. That is stimulated by God's Spirit in you. If you didn't care, we'd have another problem, right? And the power to do it. Now the question is, do you have the will to do it? That's our part. That's our part. We want to fight to understand it. So God's going to play his part, and here's our part. He says, don't let sin control the way you live, period. Don't let it. Don't give in to sinful desires. You got to say no. You say, okay, easy for you to say, Ben. No, it's hard for me to say, but it's what you have to be willing to say. You make one step, and he moves. One step, he strengthens. One step, but you got to make a move in the right direction. He says, don't let any part of your body, and in the original language, George, any part means any part. George is a linguist on those things. Any part. So don't let any part of you. You pick it. Don't let it become an instrument of evil to serve sin. Ooh, that's a graphic language, isn't it? Instead, your choice, give yourselves completely to God, for you were dead, and now you've been brought to new life. So use your whole body as an instrument to do what is right for the glory of God. Pretty cool stuff. God's part, our part. Incredibly powerful. We got to be willing to deal and engage. And I thought that question was, so why did self-control make the list? It's kind of an interesting thought, because Peter makes this list of 7 things to add to your faith. I think it's this. It was a glaring weakness in his life. Don't you love the honesty potentially here of Peter saying, look, I was a wreck. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. What did I do? I took out my sword and whacked off Malchus's ear. I didn't say, Lord, your will be done. I'll follow you. No, I'm going to fix this. He take a sword and he tried to whack off Malchus's head. He missed, hit the ear. Just some moments later, someone said, yeah, you were with Jesus, weren't you? And what did he say? I never knew him. Another time he says, no, I'm not part of his team. And thirdly, a little girl comes up and says, yeah. He says, no, I don't know who he is. And then a rooster crows. And you realize he denied Jesus 3 times. Self-control. And it was on the other side of the cross that he learned the lesson, a bitter lesson, when Jesus asked him 3 times, Peter, do you love me? You imagine that sword just kind of went right into his heart going, oh, what a failure I am. No self-control. Little. He needed to learn it. And I think secondly is that he knows it limits most believers in how they live for Jesus and enjoy their lives. Because isn't self-control one of those things? You just, if you're like me, and maybe it's just me, so you can just look into my life, and my lack of self-control is frustrating. There are times I just say, what a mess. Who will deliver me from this body of death, right? I mean, you kind of just, and it's those moments where you feel like, am I a Christian? What's the matter with me? And Peter would say, you just need to get a grip on this thing called self-control. We're gonna get better or we're gonna stay stuck. It's up to us. Because God's prepared to do his part. We've just got to engage. It's that or nothing. Well, let's get on the solution side of this, right? So how do you grow in self-control? You thought, you didn't know we were going to get here. Here it is. 3 things. It's always 3 things. Isn't that interesting? God always made the answers in 3s. Well, I like them in 3s, so they probably come that way in my thinking. But here it is. Number 1, you got to partner with Jesus as you face every circumstance. You got to learn what it means to be a partner with him. That's how this life was meant to be lived. Not alone, not as a lone ranger, but we partner together. And now when you read this passage in James, because Nathan talked about it a few weeks ago, right? And you all know what it means. He says, draw near to God and he'll what? Draw near to you. Beautiful. I mean, you know it. So step 1 is partnering with him. And in the New Living Translation, it says, come close to God, right? Just move towards him. Say, Lord, help me. That's a good way to move towards him. He says, and he will draw near, come close to you. That's how this works. But notice the other side of the equation. He says, now, wash your hands. We have 3 little boys at our house during the week, and washing their hands is one of the most fascinating experiences, right? We have a lot of flybys, the sink. They kind of wash their hands in sort of a transcendental way. They turn the water on, their hands just sort of pass by. In the bathroom, we have a towel that's pretty dry. Did you wash your hands? Yep. That's a miracle. I have now seen it. That's a miracle. The towel's dry, and the water was hardly, So there's something about washing your hands, which is a picture of, right, you got to clean up the things that are glaringly dirty that you tend to get into. He says, stop it. He says, purify your heart. In other words, now start doing the right thing. Doing the right thing, what it does, it begins to change you from the inside. You begin to get a repetitive nature of habit that starts, but you got to start. He says, and here's what he decides the problem, and see if this doesn't resonate. For your loyalty. Ooh, those are tough words. This is like who you follow on. He says, your loyalty is divided between God and the world. He says, and that's the problem. We just like this place too much. It's a little too fun. It's a little too interesting. It's a little too attractive, is it not? And when you start to understand that, you see the problem. Because he says, love for the world, in other words, being overly committed, overly drawn in, overly dependent upon, he says, is enmity or sort of war with God. It's like money. You know the story in Luke 16. As Jesus talks, he says there are 2 gods out there. One's God, and the other one's money. You go, wait, I never think of money that way. Oh, but Jesus did. He says, no, just watch. It will draw you. You got to give allegiance to one or the other. You can't do both. They both demand something. So either you manage your money or it manages you. I mean, it's the same idea of self-control. So first of all, we got to partner with Jesus. You got to determine that he's the one you're gonna get it on track with. This is his entire mission for us now on this side of the cross, is we are to learn how to become those who, we call it the word walk with him. But the more you do, the more he will change you, but you've got to be engaged. There's some active stuff going on. I think you get that. Secondly, how do you grow in self-control? It's a spiritual discipline you practice. And now I've lost everybody, right? You need another discipline in your life like a hole in the head, right? You just don't need it. Oh, yes, you do. Because this is how you make progress. There must be some discipline, which means I do the same thing, even when I don't want to. I do the right thing when it doesn't necessarily become convenient. I'm willing to move his way. That's how we gain self-control. And in the book of Hebrews, look at how the writer of Hebrews frames this, because it's a cool thing, especially if you're a runner or if you're someone that loves to run on rocks. When I went to Annapolis, one of the cool things we used to have, we had a seawall out along the Severn River, and it was all granite rocks, just had been piled up there, sort of riprap. And, we were young, 20-year-old guys. We used to just race along the top of that. It used to be really fun. You start at one end and just go at a dead sprint. It was about 800 yards long, and you could just run full tilt, rock to rock to rock to rock. I went back there for my 35th anniversary reunion. I said, I don't know how I got past 21. I tried to walk on it, and I almost died. I mean, literally, there's a difference. But look what he says. He says, mark out a straight path for your feet. So there's some pre-planning, there's some predetermination of obedience. He says, look, don't be fancy about life. He says, look, to get you rolling, get some self-control going. He says, mark out a straight path for your feet so that those who are weak and lame will not fall but become strong. It just makes sense. If you got a bad knee, how do you walk? Very carefully. You got a bad ankle, how do you do? Straight line, man. You don't need to be showing off and doing any OJ moves, right? You're moving very smoothly. He says, start there. It's okay. If you got some stuff and things that are just not faring well for you, just kind of let's take those out of play. Start to walk carefully. Shorten up your schedule. Make sure that you are able to function in steps that you can accomplish. Walk carefully. No need to be fancy about it. Romans 6:22 says, but now you're free from the power of sin, right? At the cross. And become slaves of God. So now you're open to him. Now you've dedicated yourself to him. That's the idea. Now, he says, you do those things that lead to holiness and result in eternal life. So he says, look, the change is not abnormal. It's not unexpected. But now conduct and faith kind of match each other. He said, let's live that way. God will begin to bless that. That's our part. And he'll reinforce it. Otherwise we're chasing. And we want to make straight paths for our feet, so we're not in that mode. And thirdly, not only make straight paths for your feet, not only begin to understand this is a spiritual discipline, you got to recover and learn from your setbacks. By the way, you're going to fail a few times. Is that fair to say? Along the battle of self-control, you're going to fail. There's no way around it. In fact, self-control is essentially a series of lesser occurring failures. It really is. And here's what you got to be careful of, and that is that you don't consider yourself to be an abject failure because you fail. Not at all. No. The fact that you even want to live a righteous life is like victory at sea, right? That is a big deal. You want to say, I'm in the game. The issue is to not become discouraged, because that'll take you out of the game. Remember, our goal is not to be out of the game. And if you become discouraged, what you'll do is you'll stop. What you'll do is you'll say, I guess I'm not good enough. I guess being a Jesus follower is more than I can muster up. No, it means you got an enemy. who plots 24/7 how to make your life less than good, who is looking to make sure that you stay off balance. I mean, that's the battle here. You know your own weaknesses. If not, talk to someone about it. That's why fellowship. Talk to each other. You'll hear other people's story. I could bring up people with story after story about their weaknesses. Wouldn't that be fun? So talk amongst yourselves after the service. Go have coffee. Oh, man, I'm just so weak here. Oh, me too. Won't that be a neat conversation? Yeah, make sure you have something chocolate in there to buffer the experience. But the idea about life is recovering. We don't give up. We don't stop. Paul says, I forget what happened before. I do my very best to say, hey, I press on to the upward calling of Christ. I'm not going to stop, is what he said. In the Navy, we have this great saying. A great man said this, and pardon me for my French here. He said, but damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. The enemy's coming at us, so what? Let's keep going, right? Let's not stop. So great to know. Look, now you read the book of Proverbs. Look what he says. Great wisdom. He says, the godly may trip 7 times. I have a picture of a SpaceX rocket falling off the launch pad. They are amazing people. They've just said, we're going to Mars, and we may fail a few times, but we're going to get there. I kind of am beginning to believe they really mean that. And you don't want to bet against those guys unless you work for Boeing, and then it may not be. And you're hoping you get it first, but no. But these guys are saying, hey, we're not going to. A setback is just something we're going to learn from. And in your life, when you have a bummer time, is it self-pity or do you learn? And the goal of a believer is you want to learn. The godly may trip 7 times. Notice the first little word there, the godly. But they will get up again. But one disaster is enough to overthrow the wicked. They're done. They're finished. No heart. Continuing to keep going is a picture of a believer who trusts in the Lord, who's not going to simply throw in the towel. Hard times produce endurance, so we keep going. That's the whole idea. Endurance will help keep you in the game. Because, I just wouldn't bet against those guys getting to Mars, by the way. They're just not giving up over there. Good example of how you want to live. Learn from your setbacks. Make sure the things you failed at, okay, what happened? I don't want to do that again. Fair to say? Make that a conversation of what did you learn so that you're not going to be in that position again. You want to be there. As we wrap this up, realize you can build or wreck your reputation. Self-control is your best play. You can wreck it. You can cause shipwreck of your life. They've been in the promised land for 100 years, well over that now. Joshua had come and gone. 10 or 12 other judges and deliverers had come. And then those pesky people that plagued Israel came back one more time, the Philistines. And they were just a gnarly crowd. They plagued Israel. But God had an answer. He raised up a man by the name of Samson. Born in the most holy and beautiful way. Strong. Ready for the task. Mission-minded. Samson had one major flaw. He had no self-control. He dated any girl he happened to find that was interesting. He married one of the Philistine women. He thought it would be sort of like evangelistic dating. He wins amazing battles, but he just can't get his life under control. And finally, a woman that became pretty famous by the name of Delilah, who was a Philistine, ends up getting close to Samson, to say the least, and finds out the secret to his strength, which he gives up to her. He's taken into captivity. this man of might and steel who'd killed 1,000 people with a jawbone of a donkey. Would you like to meet that guy? But he's a shipwreck. He's blind. He's chained between pillars. I was going to have Scott come up here because he's got the muscles. He'd look good. He's a wonderful man, but I could put him between two pillars. You would like the look. He could do it. We could probably have done the demo. That would have been so cool. Chain him between the pillars. But the sad story of his life, and here's the message. Samson was God's deliverer. No self-control. And what happens is, the last movement of his life, he's a mockery in front of a gathering. Finally, he asked God for one last opportunity to serve. And he pulls on the chains and he pulls down the temple. But he dies in the process. And these words are his epitaph. He said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And the temple crashed down on the Philistine rulers and all the people. So he killed more people when he died than during his entire life. Should have been different. Self-control. A lack thereof. I hope and pray as you kind of get a grip on today that the outcome of your life will not be Proverbs 25 that says a person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls. Everything can invade it, right? Let's be people that trust him. Do our part. Partner with Jesus. Know that there's some spiritual discipline involved. That's a good thing. It's a hard thing, but it's a good thing. It's our responsibility. And watch the future happen that was just beyond our grasp because of self-control. Peter said, you got to add it to your faith if you want to stay in the game. Let's pray as we close. Lord, I pray for my friends here today and all of us. As we imagine the future, there's going to be lots of opportunities for us. We sense to kind of live as we wish and to take those opportunities. Is a choice that we've got to make. Do we live in light of those? Do we make a choice to be self-controlled? And I pray that we'd be motivated today by just that. These aren't big changes, but these are the point of no return kind of changes that we got to make. These are the moments of life that we need to make a right call. Lord, I pray you'd strengthen us, and I pray you'd just make it clear to us that we've got a stake in the future of living for you. Lord, we know you always do your part. May we do ours. That shipwreck would not be anywhere near how we'd be described, but as people who would be good and faithful servants and would know your peace in our lives. We thank you for all you do in Jesus' name.